never get over what happened to Lonnie Johnson, and the fact that it's based on a true story blows my mind. Lonnie was walking home one day from playing basketball. He lives in a semi-rural area and he doesn't have a car, so he was trying to get a ride from anybody that passed by. Lo and behold, 4 girls in a car stopped to pick him up. Bro is literally excited because not only does he not have to walk anymore, but it's 4 girls in a car. What guy wouldn't be excited? He doesn't tell them where he needs to go or anything like that. They literally just ride until they get to a gas station. The girls want alcohol and a lollipop, and I guess Lonnie feels obligated because they gave him a ride. In his final moments of life, we can honestly say that Lonnie was happy and full of joy. And he was sober, by the way. The weird thing about this store is that they lock the doors. In order for you to get in, you have to wait for them to buzz you in, which wasn't a problem at first. But when Lonnie came back out to get in the car with the girls were no longer there. This is a completely different car, so I don't know if the girls left him there, if they set him up, or if they just didn't want him in the car anymore. But Lonnie tries to go back into the store to avoid this conflict, and the store owner does not open the door. It is Lonnie versus 6 men with bets. He wasn't prepared for this fight. There was no reason for him to have to fight. But Lonnie was killed that day. Come to find out, this town is racist as fuck. They unalive black men and take their organs to sell them on the black market. Now, Lonnie was a true fighter because even after they sedated him and removed one of his major organs, he was still alive. He fought until the very end. After they removed all the valuable organs out of him, they took his body back to where the girls first picked him up at on the side of the road. Somehow, the police ignored all the bruises and bumps and ruled his death as natural causes. They said that he was running so hard that his heart gave out.
Like to say, call on Allah, Yahweh, Bashim, Yahweh Shai, Bashim, Hakadash, to honor to the apostles and the elders, great millstone, peace, citation, hope for elect. And I just want to put my 2 cents in about this film that I recently watched, about last week, and it's called One Spoon of Chocolate. And this film is really just pretty good in detail of showing you what goes on in today's world. A lot of people don't really understand that racism is a thing that goes on to this day. I don't want to really spoil the film or nothing, but just pretty much speaking my piece on it. The fact that they show you, like, in the analysis, like the lady was saying, how they go into organ harvesting and they go into showing you how they cover up shit, showing you how sometimes when you seem like you the only black guy, or colored guy or so within a group of white people, just understand that's a red flag. Because you find that a lot of times, like, it don't have to be the South states. It could be only anywhere, because there's something called sundown towns, and you have it to where we're not equal as with our oppressors to this day. Esau looks at us like we're inferior, when in fact he's actually inferior, and this is the reason why the Most High doesn't want our people to be integrated amongst these other nations. That's why he wanted us to segregate from them, especially out of all other nations east from Esau. But for the most part, one thing that brought my attention in the film, was the words of wisdom that happened like around, the beginning of the film or so, when he was like in the kitchen or so, like in the cafeteria. This character that Shamik was playing, and pretty much like there was the container where it contained like 1 spoon of chocolate when he was in the cafeteria. He pretty much threw it out or so, and then there was the old man sitting there telling him that 1 spoon of chocolate changes the whole glass of milk. Because Esau pretty much is considered to be white, as he pushed that that witchcraft out in the world to make it seem like dark skinned people are black and all this bullshit, and that how basically he's considered to be white when in fact he's red, because his blood shows through his skin and his skin is translucent, because no one's really the color white and no one's really the color black, but this is the witchcraft that Esau has put out in the society. So everybody's just going along with the bullshit that he's pushing. So, you know, but the point of the film with that quote that he said, that pretty much like was the title of the film, you know, One Spoon of Chocolate, and the fact that, you know, in the end, when you see what this guy does, it really makes sense, you know, showing you that when he pulled his vigilante, you know, he pretty much went in beast mode and did what he had to do and got busy, you know, as he shouldn't. And he pretty much got his revenge in a sense, but like I said, don't want to go too much into it, but, you know, given from the analysts of what this lady was saying, like, yeah, you know, a lot of the stuff that goes on in that film, that went on in that film, goes on to this day, you know, where racism is, you know, a thing. And not only that, like, even in states or so, like, where you may see, like, a lot of benefits of, let's say, they claim in that film Ohio was a state of the organ transplants, and you gotta ask yourself, like, I wonder how that's so. Because a lot of the shit that they like to highlight, just saying, like, even in this world, like, let's say, a lot of stuff that America likes to highlight, like maybe America is probably the country that has like one of the best places to, like, you know, do business or so. And, you know, they don't ever like to reveal the underground methods of how, and unethical methods of how they're making a lot of money. You know what I mean? Just like how they claim there's a war on drugs, when in fact they're the ones that work with the drug dealers, and they fund the drug dealers using the DEA and the CIA, bringing, you know, the drugs and all that shit to the communities. And then the same thing with the guns, how they fund the gangs and then eventually build them up to bring them down, you know, giving cops a job to pretty much intervene and raid, you know, these gangsters and all that shit, you know. Pretty much movies like that are interesting for the most part, because it shows you that this is how Esau gets down, you know. And this is the book of Sirach, chapter 12. I'm going to start at verse 10. It says, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. And this is, you know, pretty much talking about Esau, not really only the Edomites that show their racism, like the ones that you would consider as rednecks or so. Not really those Edomites, because you already know from straight off the bat that they will just show you how wicked they are, you know. Those Edomites in those sundown towns, like, yeah, they definitely will show you their racist tendencies, but that's Esau in his true spirit. And you gotta congratulate Esau for doing that, because that tells you to get the fuck away from them. But the ones that hide their racism, that try to suppress it and smile with you, you know, it's like they're the worst ones, because they will cover up how they killed you. They will never show you how they you know, went out their way to actually slaughter you. You know, they will have like skeletons in their closet of, you know, which is like a idiom of saying that how they're not gonna show you, you know, basically the shit that they try to hide and cover up. They ain't gonna show you it. Just like how, you know, those Bell brothers killed Kendrick Johnson, and just like how there's a recent one that they killed. They killed this boy named Nolan Wells. You know, that's the recent one that they killed, I heard. And apparently he went to a private island or so on a trip with a group of white boys on a boat. You know, that's just a, you know, sign telling you that if you know you're the only colored person in that group, that's a huge red flag. If there's no diversity amongst the group, yeah, and I'm talking about, when I say diverse, I'm talking about like a good 20 people that's colored and all that. You know, and plus you go into an area where you don't even fully know, yeah, chances are they're setting your ass up if you're outnumbered by a whole bunch of these white motherfuckers, these Edomites. So, and pretty much in that film of One Spoon of Chocolate, that white guy that pretty much got tattoos on his neck, and he was the same one who had his nose broken in the gym, the same one that pulled out the knife and got his ass beat by the guy that Shamik was playing along with the cousin in the film. Yeah, I feel like that white guy with the tattoos on his neck, which his name is James Lee Thomas, I feel like he could be an Israelite foreigner, because I remember going into when he was being interviewed after the film production, he said he felt uncomfortable with some of the scenes, showing you that he ain't racist, but he just still had to play his part in the film, which, of course, when you in a film, you gotta just play the part out. But he said that some parts of it made him feel uncomfortable. And, you could tell, like, he got a little swag to him in a sense, He could seem like he could be Jake, but, yeah. Which shows you that it's really a spiritual thing, and, which you go off by the spirit, of course. But, just saying that, like, within that film was very, educational in the sense of the fact that even though it was, not necessarily a true story, but it just shows you that shit like this actually goes on, and they stage and try to cover up the deaths of, like, let's say, of Jake, to act like, Jake died this way, he went out and did such and such, and they're gonna, of course, cover it up. And this is to show the perpetual hatred that Esau has for you. But continuing on, Sirach chapter 12, I'm going to start at verse 10 again. Never trust that enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away. Alright. Set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words, and be pricked therewith. Right, so you got to stick with these words and always remember that this is the devil we're talking about. Esau is not to be trusted by anybody. Shit. I mean, these devils are even so fucked up. Look what they're doing to their own people. So we sure as hell can't trust Esau if his own people are just suffering under his hands. And it says, who pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent, or any such as come nigh wild beasts? All right. And that's the part that I'm trying to make, is that, from that film, showing how Esau gets down, how they try to go in and deal with Jake, try to catch Jake in the wrong place in the wrong time, because the wrong time you get caught up in a sundown town like shit, and you come across these Edomites in that time, and your ass is grass. God forbid if your car break down or some shit. That's why, what's his name? When you read the book of Psalms, this is coming from King David, one of the highest, prophets in the truth under Yahweh Shah. He is considered as the top of the elect. This is why he said in Psalm 17, verse 13, arise, O Lord, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. Right? And Esau is the sword of the Heavenly Father. And I feel like, the worst heathens that the Most High could ever give you to be judged by is Esau himself. And I mean, when I say Esau, I don't mean Amalek. I mean, they're the chief nation Edom. I mean these racist KKK Edomites. The Confederate ones, motherfuckers, because them Edomites, man, I'm telling you, shit, they be the ones a lot of them are low level, and what they do is they will kill you, probably even torture you before they kill you, and take your organs and sell it to them small hats. you know, and mainly the, just the wealthy amongst them. That's how, they're money hungry and desperate to do those things. Because at the end of the day, it's like, these low level Edomites that work in these 9 to 5 jobs, you know, and they are part of the KKK on the low, you know, whether they be police officers or military veterans or some shit, they have like a tie with the Ku Klux Klan. And then eventually what they do is that they link up at certain times throughout the day, in the night or so. They link up, have their little KKK meetings and all this shit. And what they end up doing is that they end up snatching up Jake in the wrong time. That Jake ends up being in their towns or some shit, and they're outnumbered by them, and they pretty much will probably abduct some people too, some Jakes that get caught up out there, and then eventually they try to act like they staged their death or some shit. Or sometimes if Jake is foolish enough to hang around them and try to meet them at a wrong time, like you camping with them, you hiking with them, you going out somewhere where they outnumber you and you're the only one there, or one of the very few Jakes that's there, and then your ass gets caught up out there, and then they just act like, oh, somehow you died of natural causes, or you just, pretty much died of some overdose or some shit. Like you died from drinking and driving, whatever that sounds like could be realistic, but they just make up some shit. But then it's like the bruises that they've given you and the way they attacked you, and then it's like they didn't even go into detail of how you got these attacks or how you got all these lacerations or so. How did that happen from being drinking and driving? You gotta question that. And then it's like when you do the autopsy of a dead Jake, why his organs going missing, especially if he's not even considered an organ donor. So from there something fishy going on. And that's the thing about a lot of these Jakes. I don't understand. You're not equal to this devil. We were never meant to be, buddy with this devil. They're enemies from the womb, and it's spiritual. And in Ezekiel 35 verse 5 it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord Yahweh, Bashem El Shah, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Sif thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Right. And, pretty much the Most High is promising that this is what he's going to do to Esau, because you had perpetual hatred against your brother, which is Jacob. Which Jacob going into so-called Black, Hispanic, Native Americans. And Esau, you pretty much consider the Edomites, so-called white people. You're going to pretty much receive the judgment for doing what you did. And the scriptures say that, like, this devil, hates us, as a nation of people. As much as we say through the spirit that we have enemies, which are the other nations, and, Esau being the worst of the heathen nations, you also got enemies of our own people, which is 2/3, That's the reason why, like, pretty much honestly, when it's coming to this truth, that's the reason why, like, in the world, you only want to deal with people that seem to have some integrity as like a brother in the truth. And ultimately, of course, in the world you can't really tell who's who and all that shit, because like I said, you got Israelites that also look like them as well. And ultimately, when you have this understanding, this truth, you want to really deal with the brothers that's in this thing, And you're going to have those that's amongst us teaching and listening that actually understand this truth. You're going to have those that look like Esau too, to the point where you can't even tell. So that's why you go by the spirit. Yeah, but that's pretty much like, the detail I wanted to bring out, what I thought about the film and just put my 2 cents into it. Really highly urge brothers to watch this because this film is really just epic, and you know, parts of it will get you upset, but you know, we understand through the spirit. If it happens in real life to any Jake, it's a form of judgment, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it's just a movie, And besides, in the end, we will get our revenge on Esau in the end, and and they only tortured us as a man. So, in the next side in the kingdom, we're gonna all have spiritual powers, and we all gonna lay hands on them, and it's gonna be for 1,000 years, and the time is gonna be super slow. You know, back to how ancient time was in the ancient world. So, but yeah, with that, I hope it made us edify, like to give all glory, praise, honor to Adonai Yahweh, Bashem Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Kakadash, the honest apostle, Elsgray, Milson, peace, citation, hopeful, like Shalom.